Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Al24 Midnight News coming to you live from the capital Algiers, and these are tonight's top stories. Zionist occupation continues its crimes of genocide in Gaza. More than 70,000 martyrs, including more than 7,700 children. And occupation is committing a new horrific massacre inside school in the vicinity of Indonesian hospital north of Gaza. Guterres uses Article 99 of United Nations Charter, and Palestinian Authority appreciated the step and calls on the Security Council to adopt it. In Algeria, the African Startup Conference culminates in the approval of Algiers' declaration for the development of startup enterprises, and the access to sustainable sources of financing is the biggest challenge facing innovative projects on the African continent. Spokesperson for the Palestinian Ministry of Health in Gaza, Dr. Ashraf Al-Qudra, said that the bodies of 350 martyrs and 900 wounded arrived in Gaza hospital during the past 24 hours. Dr. Ashraf Al-Qudra said that the number of martyrs in Gaza Strip had risen to 17,177 and those injured to 46,000 since the start of war on Gaza, pointing out that there are difficulties in counting those killed and wounded due to the continuous bombing and cutting off communication. Dozens of citizens, including children and women, have been killed since Thursday, while others were injured. And dozens of also homes and buildings were destroyed in the ongoing Zionist occupation bombing on Gaza Strip. Palestinian media sources reported that the Zionist warplanes bombed a mosque in the Darash neighborhood in Gaza City, resulting in the death of 12 people. Occupation forces also carried out a large massacre in shelter center in the vicinity of Indonesian hospital, and it involved the Aleppo school, which was housing families, according to what local media sources reported. The occupation forces killed a group of citizens, while dozens of bodies remain in the schoolyard. The Zionist occupation continues to commit massacre throughout the Gaza Strip, as it has intensified its raids over the last hours on residential areas in the north and others in the south. It also besieged a school sheltering thousands of displaced people in Beit Lahia in northern Gaza Strip, killing dozens of innocent people and wounding hundreds of others.
62 days of bloody war on Gaza have gone by. Minute attacks on all Gaza Strip by land, sea and air. Khan Yunis in the south of the Gaza Strip has become a major target of the aggression. The occupation aircraft bombed a residential area in the region of Tahliya and other houses in the Al-Mashru' area. It also launched heavy raids on other areas in the city of Rafah, especially on the Shabura camp, leaving dozens of martyrs.
We were surprised at 6 p.m. with an attack on our house with 3 missiles launched by the occupation forces. They targeted children and women, as you can see, and they told the guests that the south is safe. So the letters fled to Hamad and then to Rafah, thinking that the place is safe, and they are all killed. This is the occupation, and there are its actions.
To the north of the Gaza Strip, where the Zionist war machine continued its bloody, indiscriminate bombardment on the Jabalia camp and the Nusayrat camp, as well as in the Sheikh Radwan neighborhood and the civil defense area. It also besieged a school sheltering thousands of displaced people in Beit Lahia in the north of the Gaza Strip amid gunfire and artillery shells. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians who cling to their land are facing a bitter reality imposed by the occupation, while others fell in martyrdom without committing any crime except wanting to live in peace in their country.
In a rare move on Wednesday, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres invoked Article 99 on the UN Charter to formally alert the Security Council about the global threat posed by the Zionist onslaught on Gaza Strip.
The daily scenes of killing, murder and destruction of the Zionist war machine on Gaza Strip and its inhabitants prompt the Secretary General of the United Nations to activate the most powerful tool he possesses in the organization's charter to alert the Security Council that what is happening in Palestine threatens the maintenance of international peace and security.
This is the first time that Antonio Guterres has done this since he became Secretary General in 2017. Article 99 states, and I quote, that the Secretary General may bring to the attention of the Security Council any matter in his opinion that may threaten the maintenance of international peace and security.
United Nations spokesman said that the Secretary General is activating the authority granted to him by the Charter in what can be described as a major constitutional step. The Palestinian representative to the United Nations, Riyad Mansour, appreciated the request of the Secretary General of the United Nations to activate the article of the founding Charter of the United Nations. Mr. Riyad Mansour expressed his hope that the Security Council would adopt it. In the same context, he called on the International Criminal Court to hold accountable the perpetrators of crimes against the Palestinian people and the government of the Zionist entity and the settlers.
We expect that the draft resolution will be put in blue today and action will take place on it when the Security Council meet tomorrow at 10 o'clock as far as we know.
Despite UN Secretary General repeated calls for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza, the Security Council has not yet adopted a resolution due to differences among permanent members, namely US objection.
And now to have a clear idea on the ongoing genocide in Gaza, I'm joined live by Mr. Hamoud Salhi, who is an associate professor at California University. Mr. Hamoud Salhi, thank you so much for taking part with us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Bless you. Mr. Hamoud, activation of the Article 99 of the UN Charter by Guterres, what that's supposed to mean at this particular time and at this particular stage of war in Gaza?
It's a very, very important step in terms of a procedure that the United Nations Security Council has to go through. This is when a situation is so grave that it reaches a level of threatening the international community. And it is in this context that UN Secretary General intervened. Normally, this kind of situation would come from the Security Council itself. The Security Council meets on a weekly basis, or is expected to meet on a weekly basis to go over the agenda. In this case, it hasn't happened because of the challenges that the Security Council has. So it's very, very significant, and it has a lot of implications. What it means is that this will follow a new procedure where the Security Council is expected to meet, and according to Article 39 of the Charter of the UN Charter, the Council meets, decides whether this merits the threat that the Secretary General has approved. If it does, then economic sanction will follow and diplomatic sanction. And then if that fails, then you have have another article, I believe 42, in which the United Nations Security Council is now obligated to intervene by using force to deter the threat from affecting the international community.
Very good indeed. Mr. Hamoud, don't you think that United States would oppose this decision and use its veto action to stop the activation of this article? After all, the whole world now acknowledged the unconditional support from US to this entity, even to commit genocides against humanity.
Yes, and this is why technically, on many ways, this is, well, it's a procedure. The United States will definitely make the case that this is a wasted effort, or it will try to derail it using its veto right. But it's very, very important. And this is what it means, is that you have a serious matter internationally. What it will need is have a country to take the lead. We've seen a recent trips made by the Russian president to the Gulf region. You have a meeting of the Iranians with the Russian president. You also have declarations by the Chinese. So you have security members that will have to take this initiative and implement it. And because you have these two countries, it is highly likely that this will be sort of a step that could lead to some results. Just as a sidebar note, the United States may be actually in a position to sort of see this as a way for it to pressure Israel. This is under the claim that's what's happening in that Israel can make its own decision in this war. But at one point, a report surfaced or said that Anthony Blinken did threaten Israel if he didn't stop, if he didn't sign on to the pause that we had recently by not using its veto right. So yes, on the one hand, it is United States is expected to do so, but on the other hand, it could use it as a leverage to force Israel into taking a decision that the United States wanted to take.
Hopefully so. Mr. Hamoud Salhi, just an hour before I entered the studio, I was watching the press conference of David Cameron and the US Secretary of State. Now, the world are saying that the United States is kind of withdrawing its forces, withdrawing its support from backing up the Zionist entity, and they are handing over the fight to UK. What are you saying about this? And David Cameron come back now to the scene at this particular time. What does it represent?
So it's very, very interesting. I saw the press conference also, and there's a lot of talk about humanitarian. I think both the United States and Cameron or Britain have a lot to say in this conflict. They could put pressure on Israel, but it should be noted a lot of these statements have not gone beyond statements. In other words, we haven't seen a plan or a move forward to do anything. So whatever is happening there, certainly the British now have their own intelligence plan, which according to some is not unfamiliar to the resistance in Palestine. So it's very, very interesting. But what we have seen, the United States is saying, don't hurt the civilians, but there is no plan for them. And what does that mean? There is no talk about ceasefire. The press is reporting the United States wants to give weeks. But again, we hear that as long as there is interest, that there is a decrease in the killing of civilians and there is assistance, that the United States may be open to extension of the war against the Israelis. So I really don't have a good answer what that means, except the position that these countries have taken. They are open for their support for Israel by using all means necessary to support Israel. But at the same time, all the things that they have said that would hinder or stop Israel from doing what it's done have only been on the record as statement, but there is no plan for them to follow course or to put Israel on hold.
Quite interesting. As last point to discuss, Mr. Hamoud, you are kind of experienced in the international relations. I mean, what is your point of view? What is your expectation on what is coming, especially for Gazans and the Palestinians' cause in general?
Honestly, we've seen conflicts in other parts of the world. The atrocities that we've seen today done against the Israelis are too much. They are beyond humanitarian. I don't think there is any description for it. And that is actually one of the factors that will be sort of, sadly enough, that the conflict could be it could be some end to it by January, for the fact that there are some political variables there as well, American elections. And the second thing is the pressure, the inhuman treatment, the violation of international law. This couldn't continue that far. So other analyses are saying that what we are going to see is a ceasefire somewhat, but then we'll continue doing what Israel will continue doing, what is doing probably in Lebanon with a small scale, low tense conflict, meaning that people will have there will not be any more big scale attack as we have seen today. And on the other hand, there will be some truce. But what is really the defining moment for this? Of course, there is the silence of the international community, but there is also the resistance, what the Palestinians are doing on the ground, that has surprised many. And it is this that will impact the decision, or one of the factors that will impact the decision that Israel will have. So it's as a hopeful answer is really this could end by sort of in January, early January. But knowing Israel and how we've seen this unfolding, they are bent to destroy Gaza. I'm
sorry to cut your train of thought, Mr. Hamoud Salhi, but allowed me to add this for you. I mean, neither United Nations nor international community, no one in the whole world could hold them accountable for their actions. I mean, this Zionist entity and their barbaric killings to the civilians, armless civilians. I mean, who dares to hold them accountable for their actions? Who?
You know, it's an excellent point, and I cannot tell you how depressing to see the institution of international law being so not respected, and to the degree they are. I think what's happening, number one, a direct answer is that the resistance inside Israel, inside Palestine, what we have seen in Gaza, what we have seen the kind of resistance that the resistance has done. The second thing is that the resilience of the Palestinians in Gaza. I mean, you've seen the families, you've seen the children these days when they are sort of they are crying, but then they come and pray to God, and these two variables, the resistance and the people, are going to stop them, and it cannot continue. We've seen with the Algerian Revolution. I mean, we were in 1954, as all Algerians know, there was a belief that French could never be defeated, and yet the Algerians took arm and did exactly what the Palestinians have been done a lot.
Perfect. Thank you so much for being with us always, Mr. Hamoud Salhi. You joined me live from United States.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now, moving on, United Nations and the Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs, Martin Griffiths, said that the pace of occupation military attack on southern Gaza is a repetition of what was the pace in its north. He stressed that what is happening in Gaza Strip represents a threat to international security and stability.
That we do not have a humanitarian operation in southern Gaza that can be called by that name anymore. That the pace of the military assault in southern Gaza is a repeat of the assault in northern Gaza, that it has made no place safe for civilians in southern Gaza, which had been a cornerstone of the humanitarian plan to protect civilians and thus to provide aid to them. But without places of safety, that plan is in tatters.
To a different matter now, the second edition of the Africa Startup Conference concluded Thursday in Algiers, where over the course of 3 days of its event, the role of startup companies in achieving the goals of African Union's Agenda 2063 and United Nations Agenda 2030 for sustainable development was reviewed, and the commitment of African governments to enhancing the economic role of startups and innovative projects was confirmed. At the conclusion of the proceedings, the second Algerian Ministerial Declaration for Development of Startup Enterprises in Africa was also approved, which praises the efforts made by the Algerian government in supporting African startup companies, in addition to adopting a draft African Charter on the issue of brain drain, with initiatives that include facilitating the movement of startup companies and stimulating investment in talent and research and development.
His Excellency the Minister of
The same line of thought, African startups face several obstacles that slow the contribution to the economies of the African countries. Perhaps one of the most significant is the lack of funding.
Africa's startups have made progress, but obstacles persist, foremost among which is funding, which hampers the growth of innovative entrepreneurs and startups across the continent.
So the foundation is doing various projects in academic and business and cultural field. Among them, the startup project is the most important project, I think. And the main role related with this startup field, so we are trying to connect the stakeholders, startup stakeholders between Africa and Korea. So it means that we are trying to connect the investors and accelerators and the startups.
Beyond the funding issue, the lack of mentorship and investor reluctance toward bold ventures further complicates matters. These challenges, coupled with geopolitical instability and the looming threat of climate change, cast a long shadow over Africa's aspirations.
What we had a chance to discuss is that there is a big difference between the offer and demand on the side of the startups and the venture investments and the capital. What I think is the most important is to convince people that it is a worthwhile endeavor as an entrepreneur to become an angel investor, because it's something new. But even in Algeria, even in Africa, there are people who have money. They are entrepreneurs, but for some reason, and we know this from Europe, for some reason they don't consider being an angel investor as a thing worldwide doing. But in these 3 days, we had the opportunity to see that these entrepreneurs, these young entrepreneurs, they have a lot of things to offer.
Nevertheless, supporting these companies is crucial for unlocking the continent's true economic potential. By empowering and investing in Africa's youth, we can pave the way for a brighter, more prosperous future. Betting on young innovators isn't just a gamble, it's a strategic investment in Africa's promising tomorrow.
Nigeria Still, the Algeria International Channel, Al-24 and Russia Today channels signed a memorandum of cooperation and mutual assistance in the field of television broadcasting in order to develop and strengthen relations of friendship and cooperation between the two media institutions. The signed memorandum of cooperation takes into account the mutual interest showed by television viewers in Russia and Algeria to the television programs broadcast by both parties.
مهمة جدا قضية المراسل. أنا جنسيست للزيارة يعني ممكن أعطوكم تعاون مع روسيا اليوم.
Cooperation with Russia today is very important in order to expand our experiences, especially that Russia today has a global experience. And it is important for Al-24 News, which is an emerging channel that has less than 2 years of existence, to have collaboration and cooperation, an exchange of expertise. It is important also to cover international events.
To this end, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for taking part with us. For more updates, you can follow our social media platform. And at the end, take care of yourself and good night.